Chapter 6 The Hand. It was almost 10 at night by the time we finally arrived in El Sacrificio. The town was smaller than we'd expected. In fact, it wasn't really a town. El Sacrificio was no more than a few dozen houses clustered around the country road we'd been traveling on since we turned east on Highway 57. At a puestecito, a corner store about to close down for the evening, I got out of the car and asked an elderly man who was sweeping the storehouse porch if he knew how to get to the dead man's home. The old man squinted and looked toward the car before he answered. He would have been better off staying gone, the old man said, pointing to the car with his chin. What? I asked. He opened the door and placed the broom against the inside wall. He has no business being here today. What does he want to do? Ruin the poor girl's day? What do you mean? I asked, confused. Do you know him? Of course I do. Everyone knows each other around here, the elderly man said as he took a rag out of his apron and began to wipe down the metal domino tables folded out by the front door. He's a good-for-nothing, un vago, but that's none of my business. Flour from a different sack, as far as I'm concerned. Well, do you know how to get there? I asked again. But instead of answering me, the store owner turned away and left me standing there. Then he went into the tiny depot, closed the door, and came to the window to pull down the shade. A moment later, the porch light went out, and I stood there, wondering what I had done wrong. You're almost there, a woman's voice whispered from the darkness. I turned around and almost jumped at the sight of a female figure coming out of the shadows from behind the storehouse, like a ghost. God, you scared me, I said, holding my hand to my chest as if to stop my heart from fluttering out of it. You've come a long way, the woman whispered as she inched her way toward me, never really leaving the shadow of the porch, but getting closer and closer to me until I could finally see her face. I'm proud of you, Odelia. Llorona? I whispered her name in grateful recognition. You're almost there, she continued. Just follow the sound of the whispering moon. Listen to her sighs. It's the small pink house. You can't miss it tonight. Wait, I said as she started to drift back into the shadows. Is this the part of our destiny? To watch over us? Help us when we need you? I will be watching you as you deliver him, and afterward too, La Llorona said. But I cannot interfere with your journey. There are rules that must be followed, and I will not be able to break them. There is only so much I'll be able to do. The rest is up to you. You must face your own fears and fight your own battles as you go along. That's why I gave you the ear pendant. Fight my own battles? I asked. What are you talking about? I battled too much with my sisters on this trip already. I was ready for some peace. I've said too much. It is not for me to explain, La Llorona whispered. She turned away and disappeared into the darkness, leaving me alone with her cryptic words. But I didn't have time to decipher their meaning. I had to get out of the night air. El mal air, can kill you if you linger in it too long. So I turned away from the puestecito, got in the car, and drove on, trying to finish what we'd started that morning. As we left the clusters of houses behind, I looked up at the moon and tried listening to her sighs. I wasn't sure it was the moon that sighed, but I could hear something, a wisp of music, a whisper of song. What's going on? Juanita asked when I stopped the car and poked my head out of the window, trying to hear where the soft sound was coming from. I held my hand with my palm out, signaling Juanita to stop talking. Shh, listen, I said. It's coming from over there. La Llorona had been right. There was no way of missing the pink house, not with the party going on in the front yard. A small mariachi band was playing in the background, and people were either dancing on the lawn or sitting at folding chairs at small round tables, which had been draped with white linens and decorated with white floral arrangements. Juanita leaned over me for a closer look out of the window. What do you think's going on? I don't know. Some kind of fiesta, I whispered. I passed the house and inconspicuously parked next door, just in front of their neighbor's fence, away from the lights strung on the trees and all around the dead man's yard. The dimness of the night hid us from the guests, and we sat quietly outside our vehicles, observing everything from a dark, safe distance. I think someone's having a wedding, Velia pointed out. See, there's a bride sitting at the long table by the band. That's not a wedding dress, Juanita said. We all peered out of the car without making any attempt to get out. I don't think any of us had the courage to crash a party by delivering a dead man to it. It's not? Velia asked. No, I said, suddenly understanding. A cold chill went up my spine as I realized what was going on in the drowned man's house. There is no groom. Then why is she wearing a white dress? Peter's voice from the back seat was small and innocent. Because it's her 15th birthday, I whispered. It's a quinceañera. Who's quinceañera? Peter asked. The girls in the picture, Velia whispered. The little girl in the picture? Delia asked, horrified. You mean she's not little anymore? We were all dumbfounded at the realization that the dead man's daughter was not a child anymore, but a young lady my own age. How could we proceed with such a different reality from the ones we'd imagined? It was like our dreams were shattered. The girls looked disillusioned. I was more than shocked. I was dumbstruck. Presented with the current situation, I didn't know what to do, how to proceed. Juanita pointed to the celebration taking place in the dead man's front lawn. We have to get out of here. We can't ruin her special day, she said, shaking me out of the stupor. Shh, keep it down. We don't want to call attention to ourselves. Not yet, anyway. I bit my fingernails and tried to figure out the best way to handle the situation. We could leave, of course, but where could we go? What could we do that didn't involve taking the dead man with us? We have to do something. We can't just sit here and eat our hands, Velia said, knocking my hand away from my face. She was just like Mama, who didn't believe in biting your nails, no matter what the circumstances. I don't know, I admitted. Going up to the house at this time would be more than inappropriate. It would be downright mean to ruin someone's debut. I think we should get out first, Delia said. No, we need to talk first, I said, turning around to look right at the twins as I spoke. Listen, when we get in there, they're going to have a lot of questions for us, but we have to be smart and have each other's backs. We can't just blurt things out anymore like we did at the bridge. Juanita turned around in her seat and looked at Pita specifically. Yeah, we've come a long way. We can't afford to blow it now. So you guys have to follow the rules of the Cinco Hermanitas. Let Odelia and I do all the talking and don't contradict anything we say. And for God's sake, don't improvise. Too much cream spoils the tacos, so just keep it simple, okay? Fine, whatever, Velia said, flapping her hand dismissively in front of Juanita's face. Can we get out now? I really have to pee. Does anyone else have to pee? I have to pee, Peter piped up, squirming around in the back seat. Stop fooling around. You can't just go up there and ask to use their restroom. They don't know us from Adam, I whispered. Their commotion was only going to draw more attention to us. But I do have to pee. Peter started rocking back and forth like she couldn't hold it for one more second. I rolled my eyes and ignored her. Stop whining and be quiet, I said after a few seconds of further complaints. I need to think, and we need to keep a low profile until I can figure out what to do. Maybe we should just drive away, Delia whispered behind me. Come back later when the party's over. We can find a store where we can use the restroom. Are you kidding? Velia hissed. We're in Mexico, and those are real Mexicans in there. These people can party till dawn. Not to mention the stores we'd drive by had been dark, locked up like a puestecito. and our last resort would be to go to the woods. For this one single thing, the twins just wouldn't rough it. So we always rode up to the nearest gas station to see the restroom when we were swimming. Well, we can't sit here all night waiting for the party to end, Delia told her twin. I don't know about you, but Papa here is stinking up the car. Seriously, he's giving me a headache. I don't smell anything, I said, and to prove it, I took a deep breath. It was all I could do not to gag. The smell of the death had been festering in the afternoon heat, and now it was unbearable. I say we find a place to park it for the night, and by that, I mean get a room somewhere, Velia said, reaching over the front seat and touching my shoulder for a sign of concession. Yeah, like that's gonna happen, Juanita said. Did you see the size of this place? They don't even have gas stations here. We'd have to go back out to the highway if we wanted to find a motel. She turned around to look at Velia in the back seat. And how would we move the body into a room without calling attention to ourselves? It's not like we can leave him in the car all night in the parking lot. Let's face it, going to a motel is out of the question, and nothing else is open this late. I think you're stuck sitting next to him until this party's over. He doesn't smell so bad, Peter said, pinching her nose. I think the perfume's working. I had to admit it. Juanita's right, I said. We can't get a room, not until after we've delivered him. We could go back to the woods, camp out, wait until morning, Juanita suggested as she stifled and yawned, laid her head back and closed her eyes. I'm not going to sleep in the woods at night. I'm not a goat, Delia retorted. Next thing you know, you'll be expecting me to sleep in a barn like horses and hay and God knows what else. And lechuzas. You want those evil owls climbing all over you while you sleep, pecking your eyes out? Velia teased Delia in the backseat. Shut up, Delia retorted, pushing her twin's shoulder. I don't believe in that stuff. Of course you don't, Velia continued. How about vampires and werewolves? You believe in those? As if on cue, an enormous animal ran up to the car and jumped up onto the driver's door. He stuck his gigantic head in through the window and barked wildly. Delia and Velia screamed. I jumped in my seat, throwing my left arm out to protect my face. The drooling, long-eared beast sniffed me and then yelped and clawed his way inside through the driver's side window. I couldn't see all of him at once. That's how enormous this beast was. He had to be as big as me, but much heavier. His huge paws dug into my arms and thighs, his claws painfully cutting through my skin. He was so excited, he punched me in the stomach with a mammoth paw as he pulled the rest of his enormous body into the car. I could have doubled over in pain except that his weight was plastering me against my seat. Get him off me! Get him off me! I screamed, but nobody could help. Juanita, in the front seat, was busy trying to get away from the beast, a Great Dane. In his excitement, the dog sniffed our clothes and licked our faces so frantically, you'd think the frenzied creature had 3 heads. Finally, the beast made his way over me and jumped into the back seat, which by the time only held the drowned man because fear had set the rest of my sisters into motion. They had all vacated the car long before I was free from the dog and able to open my door and crawl out. As I stumbled up to the Juanita, Peter scooted over to me and clung to my waist, trying to hide behind me. We stood against the chain-link fence in front of the dead man's neighbor's house, watching the gargantuan canine panting and licking his corpse and whining inside the car. He sat next to the drowned man with his enormous paws neatly propped together on the dead man's lap, his tail wagging a mile a minute. Great. So much for keeping a low profile. Now I'm going to smell like a wet diaper, Delia said, moping over the saliva slathering hair with the hem of her t-shirt. Her actions reminded me of my own condition, and I wiped at my face with my shirt sleeve. It was disgusting. Do you have any of that perfume left? I asked. Yeah, Juanita said, without looking at us. But it's in my bag, next to the Marmaduke's evil twin. You want to get in? Cerebus. The voice of a pitch whistle produced by the tall figure of a young man at the gate of the drowned man's house made the mammoth canine stiffen in the back seat. Go home, Cerebus, the young man commanded. Cerebus? Like the three-headed dog from Hades? Delia asked, looking at me. Well, he's right about one thing. He's got a hell of a personality. But I'm not so sure he's fierce enough for that name. I know. He's nothing more than a big, spoiled puppy, the young man said, stepping forward, as if he'd been a circus beast trained to behave like a domesticated creature. The mammoth dog left the dead man's side and slipped out of our car through the opposite rear window. He came around the car and sat docilely by the young man, waiting for his reward. The young man patted his forehead and pointed up the street, saying, Go home, Cerebus. To our surprise, the dog trotted off into the darkness. Are you okay, ladies? Sir? The young man asked as he peered at the body of the drowned man sitting propped against the glass of the back window. He's fine, Juanita jumped in. The dog owner stepped up to the car and reached for the back door. What's wrong with him? He's not feeling well, Velia explained, getting between the young man and the car door just in time to prevent a catastrophe. He's dead. Tired, Delia interjected. She laughed nervously and shuffled her feet around. This wasn't the time to blurt out the real reason behind our arrival at the house. It's been a long trip, I said, trying to deviate the conversation away from the drowned man. Forgive me, I am being rude. I have not introduced myself. My name is Efren Perdido. I am sorry about my abuelito's dog. He meant you no harm, the young man said. Excuse me, but I didn't catch your names. Are you friends of Beatriz? Beatriz? Juanita asked, looking toward the house. La quinceañera. She is my little sister, Efren explained, putting his hand on his chest and bowing his head slightly as a form of introduction. I looked closely at the wide-set eyes and square jawline of the young man. He looked vaguely like the little boy in the picture of Gabriel Perdido's wallet, which weighed me down as I thought of the distressing news we were bearing. Dressed formally as he was, in a black tuxedo, it was obvious that he was part of the debut court, the escort of one of the birthday girl's attendants, perhaps. It became very clear to me that we couldn't finish what we started that morning. Not yet, anyways. We're more like friends of the family, I started, but we've come at a bad time. We'll come back tomorrow.